What's good, everyone? Faizan here, aka the Socio guy, and I'm back with another lesson in my series of lectures on research methods. And the topic that I'm going to be talking about today is sampling. And sampling is super important because all the lessons before this, interviews, questionnaires, observation, all of this is useless if you do not create a sample to pick your study from or pick your research participants from. So what is sampling? Sampling is when you basically choose a subset of the total population to base your study on. And with a sample, what needs to be the key thing you look for is that it has to be representative. And by representative, what I mean is that the sample has to have characteristics of everyone in the population of that particular society. You have to pick people with a particular ethnic background, a particular income background, a particular occupational background, and an even distribution of sex in there as well. So that when you do your study, you pick your research method to conduct the study on, you get your findings back, all of that has to be generalizable to the wider population. That is the purpose of sampling. So you get this subset that is representative of everyone in society, and then you can make a generalization, because that's what generally happens in sociological studies. You don't just study literally 200 million people in the country, right? You study about 20,000 or 200,000 people in the country, and then you make a generalization based on those findings. So what are your steps in sampling? They're on the board here. Step one is you choose your sampling population. This is all those people who you want in your sample, who meet those characteristics. And then from your sampling population, you choose your sampling frame. You whittle it down to a few more people who are more in line with the characteristics that you are searching for as a researcher. From there, from your sampling frame, whether you brought it down to, let's say, 20,000 people who match the characteristics, you choose your sample size, because it might not be logistically feasible to study 200,000 people. You might want to bring that down to 2,000 people or even 200 people. But the characteristics of those 2,000 or 200 people also have to match the characteristics that you are trying to study in society. And the third and most important step in all of this is your choosing of sampling method. And now we have 5 distinct sampling methods. I'm just going to step off frame. I hope you can see all of them. They are simple random sampling, stratified random sampling, quota sampling, systematic sampling, and snowball sampling. So why don't I begin with talking about simple random sampling. Simple random sampling is simply, for now, I'm going to refer to this as SRS because it's really annoying saying simple random sampling again and again. So SRS is basically very similar to picking hats, picking chits or picking names out of a hat on random. You just choose 3,000 or 4,000 people at random, doesn't matter what the characteristics are, you just need to do a study. You pick 3,000 people, let's say from the Clifton area, and you want to do a study on them based on their buying preferences based on income. So you'll pick 3,000 people from a hat. You'll probably find their names in like a telephone registry. You might go to Mobilink to get people's names. You might find their names through a CNIC registry, things like that. Then we have quota sampling. Quota sampling is basically, we all know what quotas are. You have to meet a particular number, and that's what quota sampling is. Your research might require you to only do research on, let's say, 100 Pakistani doctors who have graduated in the last 3 years. So your quota, or the number of people you need to do your study on, is just 300 doctors. It could even be 200 doctors, it could be even 10 people. So in this, unlike simple random sampling where you're picking people at random, you have your defined characteristics, but you're also limited to a particular number of people. Systematic sampling, on the other hand, is, again, you define your characteristics a bit if you want, but this is mostly doing with finding people based on regular intervals. You might open up the telephone registry and you might pick every 5th name or every 10th name. What this does is it gives you a bit more room for error. You might be hitting a wider demographic target with this, because you're not just picking every single person in the first 200 names. You're picking people on the 5th interval or the 10th interval. So you're going quite far down in the chain to find names. Lastly, we have snowball sampling right here. And snowball sampling has to do with finding samples when it's particularly difficult to go and meet a particular characteristic or find a particular criteria, or people might not be willing to be participants in your sample population. So what you might do is you'll ask someone, firstly, if they want to be part of the study, if they want to be part of your sample, and you don't have a sampling frame in this. You don't have a sample population. You'll ask one person, they'll complete the interview or the questionnaire, whatever your research method is, and then you'll tell them, you know, can you please pass the word down the chain that this person, i.e. me, the researcher, is doing this study over here, and could you please ask them if they're interested in being a part of my study, being a part of my sample. So what this does is it's like throwing a snowball down a mountain slope, right? It'll just get bigger and bigger as it keeps rolling down. One person will tell another person, will tell another person, so on and so forth. And eventually you'll have a big enough sample that you can make a generalization from, and it might be representative. This is particularly used when, let's say, you're trying to research criminal or deviant behavior and people aren't very forthcoming, or it's difficult to find people who match a particular characteristic. So you might rely on word of mouth. You'll probably go to a neighborhood, start, let's say, interviewing some drug addicts, and then you'll tell them that, okay, I'm doing this research, and then they'll go tell other drug addicts who might become part of your study. Now, on the screen for about, let's say, 20 seconds, I will put up an image which will correspond to stratified random sampling, because this is a bit of a confusing sampling method, because in this sampling method, you choose based on specific criteria. You break your survey population up into different strata or layers. So for example, let's say you have 400 students in a school. You break that down into 200 males, 200 females. That's a 50-50 split. You further break down the males into, let's say, 25% African American and 75% white students. And you do the same with the females, 25% African American females, 75% white females. And then from that you choose 5 African American males, 15 white males, 5 African American females, and 15 white females. So you've broken your population down into a particular strata, and your categories here have been ethnicity, it might be the grades of the students, and it is the sex of the students. So it's these 3 categories you're breaking it down into. And this counters the problem of simple random sampling, where, like I said, there is a little less representativeness and generalizations are hard to make. Stratified random sampling kind of makes up for that, because you are clearly defining your characteristics and you're creating a more representative sample, which in turn can create a more generalizable study. So I hope you found this informative, and I hope that image on screen for stratified random sampling was there for a long enough period for you to understand. If not, you can find that image in your study guide, which is Ken Brown. Stay tuned. Next week I will have another lesson up which will tackle a new topic, education. Till then, peace out.